That would be great.
Table 2.
All right, thank you. Boy, I'm really loving this. I mean, my favorite kind of poetry reading is where all of the readers are a very different kind of voice and rhythm. So this is just great. I mean, I feel like you wouldn't be losing anything if I just sat down. I feel almost obligated to start off with a couple of poems about the pandemic. And this first poem is from the very early days when there was almost no factual scientific information. There was so much doubt and confusion and fear. And we were given the 3-step protocols, which we were told might save our lives. So, I mean, we were all on pins and needles. One of the 3-step protocols was washing your hands. And this is called Blessing Our Hands. As if water were holy, as if our hands were miracles we had just discovered and learned to love and awe, we wash them after touching the world. In rolling caresses, intertwining fingers, nails, and knuckles, we work soap into a lather with light from dead stars. It is a simple baptism our mothers first performed for us. We have continued its practice, forgetting perhaps the insistence of love as we squirmed to escape. In our now threatened lives, the import of washing our hands has outgrown its innocent, merely functional purpose. Like snails, their shells, like snakes, their skins, like our baby selves, the amniotic embraces our mothers gave. So we practice this simple ritual to purify our hands against galaxies of lethal taint, while the faucet sings in the key of oceans and runnels, pouring forth, whispering all and ever. But even washing and believing in the beauty of our hands cannot grace us with immunity from the jellyfish sting of fear. Passing my masked and unmasked neighbors on the same earthly streets as we strolled so carelessly yesterday, I nod, my eyes smiling bravely. Thank you. Thank you. And I'd appreciate if you didn't applaud after poems, because it always makes me feel like I'm in the Olympics, like there'll be numbers up behind each time. And, you know, it's like, it was a good form, but the dismount was really bad. And so I'd be wild for as much applause as you want to give at the end, but please refrain in between songs. So this next COVID poem is maybe, you know, sometime last winter when we were really starting to get stir-crazy from being sheltered in place for so long. And it's called Confined, and if you know the Rainer Maria Rilke poem Panther, it's sort of based on that idea. Confined within walls of days, and all my days are all the same walls. I have memorized each one, like a menu from a cafe or diner I used to go to among friends. Now, I can only stalk such thoughts around, circling my cramped right-angled apartment where each wall becomes 1,001 bars, caging me in with no world beyond contagion. Only at times, the curtain of my eyes lift and an image enters my walled-in heart, which I fear of late has become a place where vision goes to die. But soon, it might again know what parachutes know. The rush from cramped rucksack confines, the thump of opening into beauty or a blue sky. And then, it might remember that my tastes are quite simple. I just want to go out to a movie and then talk about it over a few pints, or shop in a store, picking out my own produce, and walk home unmasked, unafraid, and able to see and look into every face. Carol mentioned I have a book out, but it's been delayed because of COVID, so I'm not going to tell you about it because most of these poems are from the book. So this is called One Night in America. The first time I noticed my hands trembling, I was still a young man, just returned from a war, and even pressing palms and all 10 fingers against the window pane to steady them, I knew that like slither-quick rodent-eating snakes in swamp-black water or a sudden shiver in the hang of moss, it would always be there, that fear, quaking in each next step, ready to pounce and remind me. So to those now walking war's trails, I hope you survive the war and the coming home, especially you young black veterans pulled over one night in America, white policemen pointing their flashlights in your window. The next poem is called Every Day You Say, and this poem is based on a million conversations I've had with a friend going back like 40 years, and at one point there were notebooks that probably had as many pages as days in those years, and it finally ended up in a 9-line poem. Every day you say you won't report the store or the security guard who followed you down every aisle. You say you don't want to be the cause of a march or the name of a Supreme Court case is known by. You say, I just don't get it, and that I don't understand. It's about the hurt every day. Every day you say it's about the hurt. This is a poem from my grandfather, and it's called Immigrant. My mother's father's name was Isidore. Being a prodigal punster, I'd ask and shout, Grandpa, Isidore? He'd laugh, tousle my hair, not understanding a single word. We never spoke, being as far in tongue as Brooklyn from brutal Svizlich, where he was a boy and hunted as a Jew. Doors closed long before I knew him by the nostril pinch of pipe tobacco in his flannel and gabardine clothes and the dry-lipped kisses he was stingy with. At corners, he took my hand in his smooth-skinned baker's grip, strong, insistent, and brave as his resolve at midnight border crossings. This is called From the Wild. It's not a nature poem. Maybe it is. From the wild. The hardwood floors were newly sanded, lacquered, and buffed to a low sheen. The walls and ceiling were newly sheetrocked, one primer and 2 coats of paint away from becoming the living room we had dreamed. That's when the walls monsoon gray ambushed me back to my first convoy in Vietnam. It rained like I'd never known rain. Sergeant Lewis was riding dry in the cab with the driver Tom. Fausto, Aiden, Jack, and me, the FNG, also fucking new guy, were out in the rain on the flat back, soaked cold and miserable. We were taking a prisoner from our fire base to headquarters in Phu Bai. He was blindfolded, hands cuffed behind his back. Fausto got up, ripped off the blindfold, and with his face right in the prisoner's, screamed, "Fuck you." Stepping back, he began shooting, fuck you," until he could see light and across the road through what had been the man's face. I froze, my eyes seeking out the others. Jack shook his head, laughing. Aiden repeated in sing-song, "Fausto loco, Fausto loco." I sat rigid, silent, thinking, there was no call for that. No more reason for that than my picking up the crowbar and swinging wildly, punching holes in the walls, pulling out chunks with the claw end until the piece I was so close to creating was destroyed. When I was done, my breath came in spasms and I was crying, not like a child, but like an adult who can't stop feeling sorry and sad and angry and tired, so tired of the pain of it all. That's when I saw my 4-year-old daughter looking at me, wide-eyed, just the other side of the plastic barrier I'd put up to keep dust and detritus from leaking out while I renovated spaces in the house and myself. This next poem I wrote this while holding my first grandchild for the first time. And at one point she started getting fussy, and I remembered from being a father, I remembered, to sway and rock and this and that, and she calmed down. And I also started talking to her about the birds we could hear out in the street, and it started a cadence that became this poem, Restoration, which is dedicated to Soraya Levine Brooks. The cardinals on Myrtle Street sing of spring as if nature belongs to its winged self. Despite the houses and concrete, despite the cars lining alternate sides of the street on alternate days of the week. And every day it is so that people return from work and park under power and telephone lines with the Gabriel-like trumpeting of cardinals singing cheer, 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 as if welcoming them home, as if restoring them to nature. This is, next poem is called Skirt. I'm just remembering as a poem I forgot to read that I had. Okay, I'll come back to that. Skirt. Write just one sentence to say you miss me the way irises in the garden would miss flirting with the single stalks staking them to breeze and earth. Irises with petals as pale and delicately purple as the skirt you wore the night I proposed and you accepted, and we eloped, savage and mild as bats and fireflies divining the dark, as if it might be the only life they'd ever have, and their flight, a one-sentence sonnet to live and recite. Oh, I will miss that night, the irises, their stalks, that skirt. I want to go back to a poem I had scheduled to read, yeah. Hello, can I? This is called Memorial Day 2021, and it was written on that day. The brown splash and swirl in the glass. I set down the bottle beside it, the cork forced back in place. Any smoky, sweet, aromatic notes that might escape would be wasted on me with tree pollen clogging my sinuses. And if my eyes are puffy and streaming tears, blame it on that too. But I snuck away from friends who only think of this as a long holiday weekend before summer. For you and me, it goes back to Quang Tri and a wet mortar ground that fell short of the LZ, killed you, and left me with a deadness in my right ear that I thought had been blown off. Blood on my hand when I reached for it mistakenly confirmed that fear and whatever else I might have lost in that moment. I don't know that we'd have remained friends these 52 years since, but I thought of you today as friends who are vaccinated gathered for a Memorial Day barbecue. And this drink, I will drink alone. Throw it back all at once, sudden as we were parted. I'm going to do two more poems. And this one is a memorial poem for a friend. But first I wanted to take a minute to thank Carol for inviting me, thank my fellow readers for the entertainment, the joy of your words. And I also wanted to say something I've said every time I've been here, that when I was a kid, I was wild for guitar and folk music, and I would learn from records. And many of the legendary performers, Lena's is legendary, it goes back to 1960. And it's legendary for the people who performed here. And I sat, like the RCA dog at my record, playing records over and over again of many of the people who performed here. So when I heard there was poetry here, I thought, oh, what a great idea to put it in this place. And it always makes me awestruck to think Mississippi John Hurt stood here. Yeah. So this is called Is in Memoriam Joe Hayman. I had gone to take the bare trees of my thoughts to walk in the park, seeking consolation in goose honks, coot dives, the lily white of swans beneath the ominous red-tailed glide of a hawk, and the small talk of a sidewalk bush alive with dozens of chirping sparrows, dozens chirping. For today, I was bound to bare my heart like sad hands hiding in shallow pockets. Since the news, grief has collected and disquieted memories, tangled like fish lines, sticky, blood-barbed hooks, sinkers, snares, bobbers, and bones, all thrown in and cast to rattle a racket in a gray pail, with the stinks cooked in and as sharply pronounced as the cacophonous, sad-handed carrying of it. To no avail, I am parading in grave, muddy boots, as if passing like a clarion every hearth where our names are known and called is helpful. Am, are, is. Damned present tense. Dear friends, our superlatives are but a palliative ruse, for we are gathered here today to past tense a friend's every verb, pull out each one like a dead fish from a bucket. What but an unenviable occupation? 'Tis true, 'tis pity, 'tis true. That's Shakespeare. But come, cast each in his chowder pot and gather edible nouns. Fish heads first, then turnips and beans, parsnips and greens, coriander and fenugreek. For a stew he'd simmer all day to shut winter's windows and doors against itself, because gray is a lonely ache. Is again? Here, give a stir, as he did, humming arias and songs over the stewing pot. Maybe Entarbina Quando Sumus or Lydia the Tattooed Lady. And open plenty of wine bottles for the long nights and the cold heath. And come, call on every creature to sing for a dear friend, a sweet choir voice, which first rose in the building of ricks under barn lofts and weather-vane skies. And that boy, that hay man boy, who would one day want to feed and sing for everyone he knew, for he knew how we were all always so hungry. And what for? That fine fellow, my dear friend, is dead. Is no more is. Listen, as I was telling you this morning, as I wandered the park, my bare tree thoughts encaged a hawk not 20 feet above where I stood. In its thrall, I watched the graceful swivel of its head and eyes, its bullet body as still and hard as its raptor beak. But its feathered majesty could not fool me, not today. I know what its swift, hollow-boned villainy is here to undo. Is. And I'm going to close with a poem called Every Day. Thanks, Buddy Holly, for rhyming getting closer with roller coaster. And for making us believe songs and love would surely come our way. And thanks, too, for the guitars and harmonies in sync with the cricket pulse in our thighs, and for singing the hiccuping ache and twang of yearning summer nights. A-hey, a-hey, hey. Thank you.
All right. Your gamble paid off, Richard. You got a good applause at the end. It worked out. All right, you guys, thank you for such a beautiful night of words and sharing and generous poetry. Thank you to Richard, Ian, and Jackie. Let's hear it for all our readers one more time. Next month, we're here on August 4th. And it's going to be all open mic, like no features, just open mic, open mic, open mic. Get up on stage, get it out of your system. We're going to have, no more pod seating. You can just come in and sign up and read. And then in September, we're going to go back to our old format. The only change that's going to be permanent is we're going to start at, the reading itself will start at 7 instead of 7:30. Thank you all for listening online. If you still want to leave a tip, you still have time. That would be great. The tip jar is somewhere on your screen. Go ahead and do that and be generous if you feel like it. I don't know. I'm good. Does anyone else have anything to add before we close out the night?
Thank you.
Yeah, Susan, thank you. All right. Thank you all. Have a good July.